what is the difference between direct breastfeeding and pumping?
Okay. So direct breastfeeding is that you just do an exclusive breastfeeding and then you don't have any other means of giving in formula or express breast milk. Whereas pumping is like you do an exclusive pumping, or you just express the breast milk and give it to the baby, or you do it along with the direct breastfeeding. You can mix both express breastfeeding and a direct breastfeeding.
Understood. And wanted to ask you, today, generally, as a newborn's mother, I'm also a mother. People generally, judge you when you say that, I want to pump. Even a lot of doctors are not okay with it. So what's your perspective that, firstly, when should I start pumping as a mother?
Okay. So first of all, we'll see why is that there is a need for pumping. First of all, so we'll try as much as possible to do a direct breastfeeding, because that has a lot of benefits. Okay, so basically we try and teach the mothers like different breastfeeding positions and everything, but still it's going to be the maternal choice. We'll find out why she wants to do the pumping. She can be a working mom. She can be like having no one in her home to help her with the pumping sessions. So we basically find out what exactly she wants to do, either a direct breastfeeding plus some amount of pumping, or she wants to do an exclusive breast pumping. So we find out what is the reason for it, and based on that we start. But sometimes for premature babies, that is babies born before 36 weeks, if the baby is in the NICU, then the mother has to start pumping in the hospital itself. And then even till the baby's in the ICU, she has to do more breastfeeding. Pumping. And then sometimes when the baby is ready, we go with pumping plus direct breastfeeding.
Understood. And how should I begin to pump? Initially it's just colostrum. So what is the difference between hand pumping versus using a machine directly?
Okay, so first of all, pumping it's really seems a very daunting process. You have a lot of tubes, you need to sterilize them. It takes a lot of time. So, but once if you get to know a proper technique, and once you form a perfect schedule, it becomes really you can get an easy knack of it. So to begin with, first of all, we ask the mothers to get completely relaxed, because the moment you start pumping, you're not going to even see a single drop in the pump. It requires multiple sessions of pumping to see just about 3 to 4 drops of milk. So usually if the mother is ready to breastfeed, then we let her to breastfeed for 1 to 2 weeks, and after that we'll ask them to pump from about 4 to 6 weeks, because that's when you see the real milk coming in, and you also see some amount of milk in the pump, right? So first of all, we ask her to completely get relaxed, and then to encourage the letdown. See, when the baby sucks in, the breast milk automatically sets in. But when you're going to pump, it's something like a mechanical device. So we need to encourage the letdown. So what we need to do is we need to give a good massage or kind of a warm compress to your breast before you start pumping. Okay. And if the baby is in an ICU, the mother has to completely imagine the baby being close with her, or she can even have baby's cloths next to her, so that she can just create an environment like the baby's been with her, and then she can start pumping. Because it is like you just like doing some mechanical machine being fixed to you, and you constantly pump on. You're not going to see any it is not going to be that effective pumping. Mm-hmm. And then main thing is you need to create a proper seal with a flange to see good amount of milk. So what we generally tell the mother is like we ask them to completely moisten the flange sometimes if they don't get a proper seal with the flange, and then we ask them to start pumping. So these are the basic things which we tell them to before we start pumping.
Very interesting. So I have been a mother myself, right, Dr. Aarthi, and I've actually pumped, right? But do you think when you don't get milk in the beginning, pumping helps get that milk out for the first time? Because it's very hard, right? You're very confused.
Yeah, true.
Know. Baby, sometimes, babies are born with certain injuries, so they really can't they can't latch, they can't suck. There are many issues that come, right? So what is your perspective on that?
See, definitely when you're going to pump on the first day, you're not going to see anything at all, especially the soon after the delivery. Okay, that's colostrum, which is a thick milk. When you're going to pump, it's going to be very difficult for you to get it. But sometimes the hospital grade pumps, which are, the electrical pumps which is there in the hospital, they are quite powerful. And if you do it in a proper way, you might see a little tiny drops of milk coming out. But of course, that too, when you start pumping every 2 hours, that's the schedule the baby will be feeding when you're as a newborn. So if you do the same schedule for every 2 hours, you might start seeing some amount of milk maybe after about 6 to 7 sessions of pumping sessions. Right? So till then you need to really wait patiently, and then just keep on doing it till you achieve your results. That patience matters there.
Understood. Understood. Very interesting. What is power pumping, doctor? And how do you really do? Like, how does one do it?
Okay, so power pumping is kind of a little advanced technique. So your mother, you've been pumping for quite some time, and then suddenly that you feel there is a low milk supply, or your baby demands have increased that you need to produce more milk, or it's something which resembles like a cluster feeding pattern of your baby. Okay, so sometimes we see cluster feedings in baby where they feed constantly for every half an hour, every 1 hour, they just ask for milk. This is something very similar to them. So this power feeding, power pumping actually helps you to increase your milk supply. That's a baseline thing. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to fix up a proper schedule. So we have for power pump, we have a particular schedule, and you need to keep actually pumping in that particular schedule. So mostly this is done for a period of 1 hour or for a period of half an hour. If you don't have time, then we tell them to do it for half an hour. So how do you do is that you pump for 20 minutes and then you rest for 10 minutes. Again, you pump for 10 minutes. Again, you rest for 10 minutes. Again, you pump for another 10 minutes to finish that whole hour. So this is for a one hour schedule in case if you could do it. Now, if you are a working mom, I cannot spend 1 hour to do this kind of power pump, but I need to increase my milk supply. Then you can do a 30 minutes of power pumping, which means you will do about 10 minutes of pumping, 5 minutes of rest, again 5 minutes of pumping, 5 minutes of rest, and 5 minutes of pumping. So this rest and pumping, frequent rest and frequent pumping will in turn will increase your milk production, which will help you to produce more prolactin and also help you to increase your milk productions. So we basically do it when we feel there is a lesser milk production, like when the mother is pumping and suddenly she feels there is a low milk supply, especially when she is having a periods. There will always be a drop in the milk supply when she is having a periods. So that time we just ask them to do a power pumping.
Understood. So, doctor, when it comes to pumping, there are so many things related to that, right? Whether it is firstly the pumping itself, cleaning the breast pump, how do you store the milk, how do you clean the breast pump, how do you maintain the milk supply. So what are your tips for, say, especially working moms or single moms?
Okay, so in case if you're going to do if you're a working mom, first of all, you need to prioritize, say 20 days before when you're going to get back to your work, plan, schedule it, everything 20 to 25 days prior to your, when you're going to joining date, right? That's a day you can actually fix it up. So 20 days and 25 days prior to your joining date, that's when you start scheduling your pumping, because you will never know. You cannot bring a change to your baby's feeding all of a sudden. Your also body needs also have to get adapted to the feeding schedule. Your body also has to produce the same amount of milk every time you pump, right? So it's not all that easy. So always I tell my patients to plan 20 days or 25 days ahead so that you're well prepared for the day that you're going to join, right? And also find out what are the facilities your office is providing so that you can go back and pump. How far can you store your breast milk in the office areas? If you are a work at home mom, then you have other liability. You have some convenience, right? But if you are a mother who have to go to the work, there's a commutation hour. As soon as you get back, you have meetings. You cannot go out of all of a sudden and go do a pumping, right? So you need to plan it, and you should also find out how you're going to store the milk. That's the main thing. Or if somebody is going to transport the milk, you need to find proper cooler bags. How long are you going to take to commute to give the milk to your baby? So everything have to be discussed, prioritized, and then only have to get into the schedule of pumping. So that would be the best thing. If you plan it ahead, things will run smoothly. So we will advise them to go for a schedule it, and then we ask them to put a schedule of how long they're going to pump. and how old is the baby. So based on that also your pumping also matters, and about the other weaning, that also matters. If you're giving other foods, then your pumping schedule will come down a little bit. So maybe you can pump in the morning once, maybe in the afternoon when you lunchtime you can pump once, in the evening, around 3 o'clock, 4, you can pump once. So you can schedule it according to the age of the baby and the need of the baby as well.
Understood. But there are these things, no, doctor, where there is like, there's a huge confusion around how long can you store the breast milk, how long can you actually, feed the baby, etc.
Okay. See, first of all, storage, what has been given in the theories in the net, everything is pertaining to the region wise, okay? The standards which is mentioned in the net and everything is according to the Western countries. But if you're in the India, which is actually, it's quite a hot place, of course, North India, sometimes it's cooler, but basically it's quite a hot place. So we would generally advise them to keep the express breast milk in the room temperature for about 2 to 3 hours, depending on the areas where you live. If it's a little cold, you can keep up to 3 hours. But if it's a place like south side, it's a little hotter. So we advise them to keep for 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Beyond which, it has to go to the fridge. So you can store it in the fridge for about 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours. And if you're still not using the milk in the fridge, then it has to go to the freezer, and it has to be there in the freezer for about. You can keep it for about 3 to 4 months, based on your freezer temperatures.
Just for our listeners, doctor, there are different kind of breast pumps that come, right? There are manual ones, there are the ones you can charge, there's automatic ones, the small handy ones. Is there a difference in terms of, how each one works? Is there, I don't want to get into the brand, but is there a preferred, one which actually works better?
Right. I would suggest the way the mother is going to pump. If she's going to be a frequent pumper, then I would ask her to go for bilateral electrical pump, because that saves a lot of time and energy as well. Okay. If she's going to be an occasional pumper, where she's just going to just pump when she's going to be away for a short while, but she's otherwise doing an exclusive breastfeeding, she can have a manual pump. So basically both works in the same way. It's just that in the electrical pump, there are modes of massages. There are modes for let down, for stimulating the breast, which is not there in the manual pump. So in case if you're using a manual pump, you have to completely massage your breast, give some hot compress before you do a pumping. Okay. In electrical pump, you have different modes, different setups, and of course there are various brands available in the market right now, and each brand has different like modes, different setups, everything. But ideally, most of the electrical pumps work in a similar way. So this is going to be the major difference. Depending on how you're going to pump, how frequent are you going to pump, you can choose your pumps. So my suggestion would be, in case if you're a person who's not going to do a frequent pumping, just occasional, then manual should be more than sufficient for you. So if you're going to choose an electrical, again, go for a good branded one, check out the reviews and everything, because sometimes even when you pump, if you're not using a proper flange size, the flange is the cup which gets attached to your nipple. If you're not using a proper flange, that also causes a lot of nipple injuries, and that also causes a lot of pain for the mother. So choose a proper flange. In India, there are some companies which gives different flange sizes, but most of them, it comes with 24 mm size, which is a standard size in the flange. So if your flange is tight also, you might have a lot of pain, or if the flange is loose also, you will not pump efficiently. So you need to check the flange before you buy the pump. That's the main thing which you need to take a look at.
So, Dr. Aarthi, any tips for working moms out there?
Okay. So basically, I would tell them, as I told you, plan ahead. It's very, very important that you plan ahead before you start pumping schedule. Do a proper schedule of pumping. Say, don't skip your pumping schedule, because that pumping is the one which is going to keep you up with the milk supply. Because if the baby is going to be there and the baby is going to suck and take it, it's obviously going to produce milk. But if the baby is not there, when you have to pump and take it out, you have to keep up the pumping schedule, and you'll have to constantly schedule it before the time. See, suppose if your scheduling is at 12 o'clock, you have to get prepared by 11:45. You have to keep the things ready so that you start your pumping schedule by 12, and not that you get ready by 12. Not that you start preparing by 12, right? That's a more important thing. And even if you're a working mom, make sure that you check about the cleanliness, because hygiene matters a lot. You need to sterilize You need to transport the containers in a proper way to the, you're collecting containers has to be sterilized really well. So all these things have to be taken into account before you pump.
We have just one last minute. Any last few key tips that you give any mom? It's not really related about pumping, but around breastfeeding, as it's the
Breastfeeding week we are celebrating here. I would really encourage all the mothers to do an exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. Pumping is a good alternative sources, yes, I understand, but I would encourage more breastfeeding. And if you're having a low milk supply, or if you're having a breast engorgement, or if your baby is in the NICU, and if you have any other breast soreness, or for some reasons babies are not latching well, that means your pump plays a major role. So you can actually do an exclusive breastfeeding, and you can also club your exclusive breastfeeding. I mean, like, you can do exclusive breastfeeding and you can also do pumping at the same time, so that you can increase your milk supply. Pumping is a great way to increase your milk supply. Choose the right flange, choose the right company, so that you don't end up in having nipple injuries and other problems associated with pumping. Even if a mother who cannot breastfeed, the mothers who adopted the babies, they can do feeding through this pumping, and induced lactation can be done.